This podcast is part of the Deluxe Edition Network. To find other great shows on the network, head over to deluxeeditionnetwork.com. That's deluxeeditionnetwork.com.
Your friends are nerdy and you are nerdy too. I want to talk to you, friends talking nerdy.
Merry Christmas to all of you out there from everyone here at Friends Talking Nerdy. This is the podcast making, public transit taking, kiss stealing, wheeling dealing, son of a gun, Tim the Nerd, welcoming you to another episode of Friends Talking Nerdy. Thank you all for tuning in. We are part of the Deluxe Edition Network. Head to deluxeeditionnetwork.com to find out more information about all of the lovely shows on the Den. Sitting next to me with a computer table in her lap, holding our microphone in a unique recording situation here at the Friends Talking Nerdy Studios, we have the greatest legal mind in the Pacific Northwest, Professor Aubrey. How you doing?
I just have a couple words to say.
Mm-hmm.
Ho, ho, and ho, Tim.
There you go.
That's right. Merry Christmas.
Yes, happy holidays to all you people out there listening to us today. Today we are going to be coming at you with just a couple of topics. We want to be able to respect your time, being that this episode is going to drop on Christmas Day. A number of you out there will probably have family gatherings and whatnot happening, so
You're not going to be able to interrupt everything you're doing to listen
to our lovely voices, yes.
to our amazing podcast. We've made it a little bit shorter than usual.
I mean, famous last words. We don't script this out, folks, if you haven't guessed that already. So with the way we talk at times, this may be a 3-hour episode for all we know. But again, our point this week is that we just wanted to make sure to have a couple of topics, and I think they're both going to have some meat on the bone to get some interesting conversation out. Don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. I think we should be mindful of the time.
Exactly.
Because it's going to be so interesting what we're talking about.
Exactly. 100%. But shall I start story time?
Please do start with the story time.
Okay, we are going to talk about a gentleman by the name of Eric Monte. Now, initially I was going to say, oh, do you know who Eric Monte is? But of course you do. We did a little research building up to this episode. So pretending I'm talking to you, dear listener at home, do you know who Eric Montes is? No, I don't, Tim. Okay, so here I am continuing my story. He was born in the Cabrini Green projects in Chicago.
Cabrini Green.
Yep.
Notorious.
Yes. But they kind of pertains to this story here as well. So I'll keep going instead of rambling on. Anyway, we edit here, folks. So Eric Monte, born in Chicago, had dreams of working in television as a writer. And, through luck and determination, especially for somebody that didn't have a high school diploma, he made his way to Los Angeles and became a playwright and ended up writing a play that was pretty popular in the local Los Angeles area, to the point that an actor by the name of Mike Evans saw it, was impressed, and upon meeting Eric Monte, felt that Eric Monte could help him out with a character that he was playing on a television show he was cast on. What he did is he hired Eric Monte to write a spec script for him to kind of flesh out his character, give him more of a backstory, and then he would, present that spec script to the producer of that show. So Eric Monte wrote that script. It was presented to the producer in question, who was Mr. Norman Lear.
Okay.
Eric Monte was hired to write for All in the Family. The reason we are going to start our story here, folks, is because television legend Norman Lear passed away the other day at 101. Whether you are a fan of his work on television or not, his work on television has impacted you. And he was a big enough figure in entertainment that I felt it was important to talk about the good he did in his career, because he did do a lot of good, just objectively good stuff during his career that we should talk about. But he's human. Believe it or not, humans can be scumbags sometimes, even the ones that do some really, really great things. And we want to talk about a story that, I had become aware of within the past couple of years. Other people had known about it a little bit longer, but it involves Mr. Eric Monte.
Okay.
Yeah, but like I said, I thought it would be good if we started off kind of on a positive route. And yeah, like positive wise, his shows, Norman Lear's, even though there had been TV shows before that tackled, controversial topics, quote unquote, the types of topics that the average person wants to pretend aren't real, Norman Lear took them head on, and was one of the first people to do it in an honest and realistic way. What do you think?
I agree. I really like Norman Lear's work. I remember being riveted by these television shows, all of these television shows.
Mm-hmm.
They were riveting to me, especially Good Times. I was just fascinated. It was something that was so outside of I grew up in a small town in the South.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a completely different world, but people experiencing the same kinds of things in their lives, same kinds of relationships, the same kinds of conflicts and resolutions. It felt like they were so rich. There was so much compelling there.
So much meat on the bone, yeah. I mean, it's not that every episode of All in the Family or The Jeffersons or Good Times or Maude or anything like that, it's not that every single episode dealt with a controversial topic. A lot of times there were just your average, regular sitcom joke episodes. But the fact that, yeah, they were not afraid to tackle important stuff at a time when, we had a president didn't want people to talk about that type of stuff because he wanted them to stay in his silent majority. The fact that that Norman Lear shows, were able to talk so openly about stuff like homosexuality, about abortion, like Maud had an abortion on her show. I believe that was the first instance of a character on American television having an abortion. And there were a number of, the number of racial topics that they discuss, like Archie Bunker, notorious for putting his foot in his mouth about race a lot. But on the flip side, he would always be called out on it. Now, do you think his shows may have caused some harm?
Sure, I think everything has the potential to cause harm. It doesn't seem to me that he intentionally caused harm, and I don't know. He didn't cause harm to me, and that's maybe all I can speak to.
And the reason I bring this question up is that, he himself is very open about understanding the importance of how, quote unquote, controversial subject matters can affect people, and how the power of the media can change things. I mean, we were watching a documentary before we started where they talked about he has a center called the Norman Lear Center. And essentially what they are is an independent research group that television writers will hire. Like they had an example from Grey's Anatomy, and they wanted to do an episode about the importance of organ donations. And so Norman Lear's group was able to get that medically correct information to them, and they were able to put it out in the episode. But plus, what the Norman Lear Center does is they do studies after the fact to show whether the intended impact made it or not. And in the case of Grey's Anatomy, when they had the organ donation episode, numbers of organ donations actually went up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's. I think the fact that he was one of the first people to successfully caused television, because television up to, the point of All in the Family was light comedy.
Yeah.
It was, comedy at its most base, comedy at its most simple. The reason All in the Family came around was that CBS, they had some popular shows, but they wanted to make this was also at the time to where networks started kind of veering away from overall numbers and started worrying more about demographics.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have a network that had televisions like the Beverly Hillbillies, Green Acres, Petticoat Junction, and Hee Haw, they didn't see numbers in those audiences, even though the numbers showed that a lot of people watch those shows. I mean, in terms of, repeats, Beverly Hillbillies is still on the air. Hee Haw went into syndication, first run syndication after being dumped by CBS in 1971, and they didn't go off to the air until the early 90s, I believe.
Yeah.
So it's not that they weren't popular, it's just more money in urban stuff, I guess, which is another form of segregation.
Yeah, exactly. More money in urban stuff. I guess there are more people in urban environments.
That's the one positive I was going to say, that, yeah, I mean, if you have a place like New York City compared to Duluth, Minnesota, there's going to be a lot more money in New York City, even if a majority of the people are still making just as much as the folks in Duluth.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. People are no better and no different. But I think the impact of those shows has been felt in a lot of good ways over the years, in a lot of bad ways too. I do think a lot of creators tend to see what he was able to accomplish on that show and became a little heavy-handed. A lot of, what I don't like are, like episodes of TV shows that end up being sermons for something,
Right.
which is not, it's just not good writing more than anything. It's like it's like the when I mentioned from the Doctor Who special with the little 28-second scene about
Asking about pronouns.
asking about pronouns. Yeah, I mean, just if in the wrong hands, I swear to you, that would have been like a 20-minute explanation about why that was the right thing to do. But just writing it as if it happens in real life, you're going to get people to react to that stuff, more often than not positively. You're not going to win over everybody. There are going to be people that are going to hate it no matter what, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can't satisfy everyone, so you really shouldn't try to satisfy everyone.
But I think too, as an artist, though, any artist should do what they can to, if they are trying to make an important piece and not light comedy, doing a Three Stooges sketch is, different than, putting Citizen Kane together.
Yeah.
If you are trying to make a point, just be reflective about the point you're trying to make. I mean, you can go, there have been plenty of examples over the years of ways you can go really, really, really dark, but as long as you're not punching down in your comedy and you're punching up, I think people will flock to those results.
Yeah, I mean, people have chosen good shows to keep running year after year, right? Simpsons.
And Simpsons and South Park, Family Guy. There are plenty of shows that
I mean, what episode 34
34 years of The Simpsons.
of The Simpsons? 34 years of The Simpsons.
That's, yeah. I mean, I was in middle school when that came out. That was the one, I was cool for one day in middle school thanks to The Simpsons. I was the first kid in school to have a Simpsons t-shirt of some sort.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
You were so cool.
For one day. But oh my God. Mimsy just came into the room, folks, and just immediately slid and smacked Annie in the face and started licking her. Usually what happens when we record is that they do like to go nuts.
Yeah, they do. They know that we're trying to do something because we're speaking in a different way than we usually do.
Yes, more
Business-like.
Yeah.
Business-like.
Anyway, like I mentioned at the start, wanted to, I felt because of his importance, I didn't want to, when we talk about the bad, I didn't want to come across like, I'm punching a guy when he's down.
Mm-hmm.
Because in what Bill Clinton said for Richard Nixon's funeral makes a lot of sense. A person should not be judged by their actions; they should be judged based on the summation of their entire life. Because nobody is all good, nobody is all bad.
Yeah. And wow, how powerful coming from Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
Like to have to get to that level of peace with something that you can talk about it at Richard Nixon's funeral.
Of all things, I mean, that's how we used to roll in the '90s, folks. But need to talk. We need to bring up the bad, and we'll go back to Mr. Eric Monte. This is a story that I became aware about a year or so ago, thanks to Dara Star Tucker. She's a jazz singer, but she also has a very popular TikTok page and a podcast. Where she will talk about a number of topics, but basically a lot of the focus is on like African American topics throughout the years. But I really, really love her work, and one reason is because she is able to bring up stories like this. Because going back to Mr. Monte, he was hired, and he wrote a script that ended up giving us George and Louise Jefferson.
Right.
Yep. And because of the nature of television, because Norman Lear, his production company was called Tandem Productions.
Mm-hmm.
And what will commonly happen is that you will have one company that is responsible for multiple shows. And in this particular case, B. Arthur, for instance, became a popular guest star on All in the Family, and she was so popular that they gave her own show, Maude. And one of the characters on that show was Maude's housekeeper, Florida Evans, played by Esther Roll. And this was another case to where one of the side characters became really popular, and so they spun off Esther Roll's character, Florida Evans, into her own show, Good Times, which was created by Eric Monte. The show Good Times is set at the Cabrini Green Projects in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
So the entire story was there. And I was, watching some documentaries about this. And when Esther Roll got the job, she made sure she insisted that she would only take this role if she had a husband as a partner in that story. That this was a story about an African American family in the United States that had a mother and father that were loving and cared for their children.
Yes.
And Norman Lear didn't want that.
Oh.
Yeah, which started causing problems pretty much right away. It is not what I have been able to determine from the research that I've got is that Norman Lear wanted to tackle controversial issues in his comedy. And what he didn't, in my opinion, what he did not take into account on the set of Good Times was just how the perception of a black nuclear family on television, how just that alone would be something positive and something that should be celebrated and not torn apart. He didn't get that because he wanted to tackle important topics, and that's fine and all, but you got to have everybody on board.
Yeah, I mean, you can't. I mean, this is why you have to be really successful in some kind of work, because even if you are really successful in some kind of work, it's so hard to get credit for all that you spawn.
Speaking of credit, Eric Monte, because of the argument on set, John Amos ended up either quitting or getting fired, as well as Esther Roll, ended up leaving the show. So Eric Monte decided to leave. And he ended up finding a job writing a script for a movie called Cooley High. Are you familiar with that?
I am.
I just became aware of this because of finding out about Eric Monte. But this was the origin of that Boyz II Men song, It's So Hard to Say Goodbye to Yesterday. That was a cover. I didn't realize that was a cover.
Oh, yeah.
So that song came from it. But Eric Monte discovered something when he was working on Cooley High. He found out that Norman Lear, his old boss, created a new TV show. That show was The Jeffersons. Eric Monte was not credited as the creator of the characters
Uh-huh.
of George and Louise. Big problem there.
Sure.
Now, as a comic book fan, this is some things that sadly you kind of hear about story-wise throughout the entirety of comic books. Like if you are hired by Marvel Comics and you create a character, Marvel owns that character. And if you understand that going in, that's great and all, but not giving credit to, it's shitty.
Well, and I think we in our society we value things by putting a monetary value on them, right? And so things that are more important are more expensive. This is one theory of how capitalism should work in its ideal state. So I think people want there to be recognition and fame and fortune for people who make really good television and really good movies. And that once they have that one big breakthrough, they should be able to more be the author of their own things. So they become producers themselves and have more control.
And Eric Monte agreed with you. So in the late 70s, he went to court and sued Norman Lear, sued Norman Lear's production partner, Bud Yorkin, because the Cooley High movie ended up becoming a TV show you may have heard of called What's Happening.
Mm-hmm.
That was produced by a different company, but Bud Yorkin was the head of that company. And that's a whole complicated mess there as well. But Eric Monte ended up suing, and at the end of the day, he ended up settling for $1 million. But by going ahead and doing the lawsuit, he got himself blacklisted in the community and ended up only writing a couple more television scripts for TV shows in the 90s.
Yeah.
So his career was effectively over. And while I think there is an argument here to say that Norman Lear would have probably reacted in the same way if Eric Monte were white. The fact that, Norman Lear has never really come out and commented on this, it's like, you're damned if you do, if you're damned if you don't, I guess. Maybe he did the right thing by not saying anything. I don't know. But this just, I think Eric Monte deserves credit for what he created. Does that mean, he should have absolute rights to absolutely everything? Maybe not, because again, he created new characters in an already established universe. They weren't his own original characters, if you know what I mean.
Well, yeah. It was the existing universe that had been created by Norman Lear, in which Eric created the characters
of the Jeffersons. Yes, so it's a complicated matter, and because Eric Monte was black, because black representation on TV at that time was so scarce, so that anytime that you did have something positive, people wanted it done absolutely right. It's like, it seems like Norman Lear never took that into account when going after Mr. Monte. It seems like all he thought of was, you were working on my project and now you want credit?
Mm-hmm.
Which is just like a wrong way of thinking about it, because like Stan Lee was guilty of that with, his, artists like, Jack Kirby, the notorious Bob Kane, Bill Finger situation with Batman, to where Bill Finger created a majority of the characters you associate with the Batman mythos, but up until 2016, it only said created by Bob Kane.
Wow.
Sad story, and it's one of those things too, like there's parts of Eric Monte's story that you can understand if you're looking at it from his point of view, but if you look at it from another point of view as well, you can maybe think, well, maybe the boss did have a right. I'm not trying to say I think Mr. Monte is a liar or anything like that, or is making anything up. It's just sometimes, it's possible to see things through your own own lens, through your own eyes, and not take into account another way of looking at things, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's how people get entrenched in their opinions and become fascists.
Yeah, fascist jerks.
Do
Yeah,
your anti-fascist part. Don't be a jerk.
exactly. Anyway, long story short, having a hero that is a celebrity is never a good thing. Norman Lear was never a hero of mine, but I think it's important if he was a hero to people out there to acknowledge when somebody fucked up and did something stupid. I don't think he handled the Eric Monte situation good at all from what I know about it. Now, there may be some more information that I'm not aware of, and if there is, by all means, send it to us. Go to the show description, and hit our link tree, and you'll be able to find out where to find us online, and you'll be able to give that information to me. But yeah,
I think it's one of those things too where you look back is so clear
mhm.
that it's appropriation. And even if it was owned by the company, the right thing to do would be to let him get some credit for what he did.
And the right thing would have been too to let the black writers and the black actors tell the story that they felt needed to be told. It's like Norman Lear wanted to tell black stories for white audiences, and we've really had enough of that. The times we what we needed at that time and what we still need now is minorities being able to tell their own stories, because that is going to be the quickest way for people to be able to walk a mile in another man's shoes, for lack of a better term. You know what I mean?
I would like to believe that that's possible. I mean,
It's not going to lead to utopia. I'm not suggesting that, and we are talking about entertainment here, folks. As one of the documentaries we watched said, a sitcom will not create world peace. But like the Archie Bunker character, they called him like an unconscious bigot, someone that if you could wake him up a little bit, would be able to say, okay, I shouldn't do that. That's stupid. Doesn't glorify that particular type of person, but there are people out there like that. And yeah,
I don't know. I think he did glorify it in Archie Bunker because he made it funny to be that way. And I guess one part of what you're saying is that's what brings people together is this commonality of, oh, that was funny.
funny, but in the case of Archie Bunker, he would consistently be called out on his stupid comments or his stupid actions. And it was, if anything, a way for, at least at that time, I don't know how you would execute something like All in the Family today without people just getting butthurt over it, period. But it was a way to show the average progressive minded person out there to just not swear everybody off. And I do like that message. It's not because there was an episode where they had Archie Bunker befriend a guy that started talking about, some of the same things that he did, some racist, ignorant, stupid stuff. And then come to find out that that guy that Archie met was a member of the KKK.
Ugh.
And Archie, at the end of the day, was just like, whoa, 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 no.
Mm-hmm.
And ended up not joining. He realized that ultimately his words made him seem to other people that he would be supportive of their actions, and to him that was not the case. So, like, is Archie a perfect character? By no means.
But he's not going to join the KKK, so there you go, folks.
Yeah,
He stood at the precipice of the KKK and did not go over the hill.
it's like Keith Richards with drugs, I guess. Anytime he gets to the ledge just
Moves.
moves or something. But Norman Lear, complicated guy, had a great legacy. Also, remember Eric Monte, important guy. Another one of those black artists that just unfortunately got lost in history that should be revered much more so than he is.
Yeah.
All right, how about, and I told you folks we'd ramble.
And such happy topic on Christmas.
Exactly.
Love it.
But on this Christmas day, what say we take a moment of our time to listen to one of our friends at the Deluxe Edition Network?
That sounds great. Let's do that.
All right, sit back, relax, and hear this spot.
Bev's Video Kingdom.
Because the movies won't talk about themselves.
So Andy crawls through this river of shit. He comes out, visits a dozen banks, and no one's like, I'm a little concerned about the guy in the suit.
Right.
It smells like shit.
You mean the guy that literally washed himself in a river full of shit and is supposed to suddenly smell good?
Dude, that's completely the Mallrats stink palm, which takes like 3 or 4 days to wash off.
Oh, last time I scratched my ass, it smelled like Bigfoot's dick for a week.
Bev's Video Kingdom. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
I love traditions on Friends Talking Nerdy.
Yes.
One, they make easy episodes because you know it's going to happen every single year. And this time of year is the time that, you know, for the past couple years at least, we've made sure to go back and talk about our favorite music of the year.
Yeah.
In the past, we've used Spotify for this list, but this year, because I am on the professor's family plan, we're going to be talking about our top artists this year of music we listen to on Apple Music. As we mentioned last week, the reason we are going with top artist is that for the most part, when listening to Apple Music, the professor has listened to my master playlist. So in terms of individual songs, you felt it was not representative of your overall musical taste that year, but the top artists were.
Yes, because here's why.
Mhm.
A song I may play a million times, but if I have the whole album and I listen to the whole album, I'll only hear each of those songs, say, 500,000 times. So they're not going to come up as my top ones. So the ones that came up as my top ones were like the ones that started with A, right? So like when I start my car, that's what starts. So it wasn't really representative, but the artists are.
And I like how Apple does it with the artists because they will give you a top 15. Lucky for you at home, we're not going to go through the top 15. The professor and I will be going over our top 5. But the beauty as well is that they tell you how many minutes you've listened to these artists in question. So what the professor and I will do, we're going to go through our top 5 list, start with number 5 and go on down to number 1. We'll say the band, we'll say how many minutes we've listened, and then just talk about why we like that particular band, any stories we can think of, and so on and so forth. Do you have any thoughts you want to relay to our audience before we dive in?
No, I think you explained it quite well.
Yes, like a professional radio announcer or something.
Yes.
Yes, get me on the radio, folks. You know what to do. All right, did you want to start or do you want me to start?
Why don't you start?
All right, coming in at number 5. This is a band I saw in 2002. This is, and you know, if you're a longtime listener of the show, you could probably guess what it is already, but I'll go on with my introduction here. It was the last event I attended before I met my ex-wife. Literally, my first date with her was the next day, so this was like my last day of being single.
Oh, yeah.
But if you're gonna go out like that, then what a way to go out. My number 5 band is The Who, and this year I've listened to them for a total of 976 minutes.
Hey, that's good.
Yeah, a little shocked they're lower on the list, but
I was as well. I would have expected them to be higher on the list.
yeah, at least number 3,
Yeah.
something like that. In the past they have been, but
Black Sabbath kind of. Oh,
spoiler.
oh my God, I spoiled it.
Yeah.
Thank God there's editing.
Yeah, hopefully. But what can I say about this band? I mean, as far as rock bands from that era go, they were one of the most innovative in a lot of ways. I mean, they were. I mean, look at what they did with Tommy in terms of creating a rock opera, doing taking what the Beatles and the Beach Boys did with Sgt. Pepper and Pet Sounds, and kind of expanding on it and using an album to tell a story. They did work in film. The horrible Tommy from the 70s. The only good thing about the Tommy movie from the 70s, in my opinion, was Elton John singing Pinball Wizard.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that from the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
It was so memorable.
It was 70s cheese that was fueled by a lot of cocaine.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, Eric Clapton, I don't think he was conscious when he was singing. And come on, getting Jack Nicholson to be in a musical and to sing, that took a lot of drugs to get to that point.
Yeah. Definitely.
But this is a band that, I think importance-wise, their importance is dwindling. I compared to like your Stones or your Beatles, I think the days of people getting really excited about the Who again are probably done. Does that mean they're a bad group? Of course not. There's peaks and valleys for everything, and I think we're at the point now to where, going forward, people that love that group will be rabid devotees, kind of like fans of Beethoven or today at Beethoven.
Oh, come on. Let's not be comparing the Who to Beethoven. If we could just refrain.
What I am saying is that, like 100 years from now, 200 years from now, you're not going to have a stadium full of people going to see the Who. You're not, just like today, you're not going to have a stadium full of people to see a Beethoven performance.
But you have the symphony and people go to it and they have it in a big theater.
You're not going to have stadium tour. You're not going to have explosions. You're not going to have like women showing their boobs.
Explosions and boobs for it to be valid musical. Yes. For it to be valid musical entertainment, it has to have boobs and explosions
and a guitar solo.
And a guitar solo while that's happening.
That's good music.
Yeah. Okay. Well. Okay, whatever. It's the Who. Yours, number 5 is the Who. It's my turn now.
We have to move on, folks. Number 5 for the professor.
It is Punjabi MC.
Ooh.
Punjabi MC is really awesome Indian hip-hop artist. And I really enjoy listening to Indian hip-hop. I just think it's really good hip-hop music. And, you can appreciate emceeing even in a different language.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can tell if somebody's flow is on point, even if it's in a different language.
Yeah, and it's like this. You don't have to be a fan of any artistic endeavor to be able to respect the work of a person, that's doing it. Like, I'm not in film, I'm not a Tim Burton fan, but for me to say he's bad because I don't like his stuff, it's just stupid.
Oh, sure. Sure. Anyway, that's my number 5.
Any favorite songs? Or is this a situation where their songs are more like mood pieces and you don't think of it like you would like a Pat Benatar song?
No, it is definitely songs like that you would think of as...
Yeah, not like EDM or anything like that.
No, it is not like EDM. Not at all. It is like hip-hop. So imagine Chronic.
Mm.
That is just in Indian, in Hindi.
Chronic? Who's Chronic?
God damn it. What's that album with the Chronic and the Dr. Dre and the Snoop Dogg?
Okay, yeah. The Chronic is the name of the album. Dr. Dre was that's his album, and Snoop Dogg was one of...
Well, so I said the name of the album. Why are you shaming me?
Because I thought you were naming an artist first, and I'm like, Chronic? What?
No, I wasn't. I was talking about the album. Like, it's like it's just like a hip hop album. It just happens to be in Hindi.
Shut up, you nerd.
Fucking nerd.
All right. Any more thoughts?
No.
Okay. Shall I go on with my number 4 then?
Please do.
All right. Number 4. This one kind of shocked me. I mean, I could see them being in my top 10, but to have them end up at number 4 was a bit of a shock. But coming in at number 4 for a total of 1,101 minutes, Metallica. And I have to assume that about 750 plus of those minutes is me listening to one. you know because I remember the first time watching that and just how it builds up really really slowly, but by the time it gets to that darkness imprisoning me, like this is like 88, so I'm like 11 or 12 when it's out, but that was my first real introduction to metal. Like at that particular time, Ozzy was still, if he had videos coming out, I mean, he did kind of come out with "Close My Eyes Forever" with Lita Ford, but that was a duet that he did for her album. That wasn't off of his album or anything like that. His videos would show up on like Headbangers Ball on Saturdays.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was still scary.
Yeah, he's super scary. He bit. This is what I always heard about him, is that he bit the heads off bats on stage.
He did it once on accident. He thought it was a rubber bat that somebody threw on stage. And when he did it and saw that it was real blood and felt it squirming around, he ended up having to get like a tetanus shot or something like that.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That John Osborne was a wacky guy. But the thing about Metallica, too, if you think about it, and this didn't really hit me until I read an article a few months back about music from 91. They were kind of the first band that showed that audiences wanted something different from rock. Because if you think about 91, before Nevermind, there was the Black Album. The Black Album was still very much a metal album, but you had dentists playing Enter Sandman in their dentist's office, and this was kind of like the first wave. Metallica was really the first wave that people wanted something different from rock and roll than, the pop metal stuff you got from like Poison.
Yeah.
And then once Nirvana hit, it was off to the races at that point. So while I am surprised that Metallica has made it this high, in terms of their importance on my musical knowledge overall period, I mean, they deserve to be up there.
They would never be in a top 5 for me. Mm-hmm. But as to metal bands, Metallica is one that I enjoy. And, I remember having friends that were boys when I was like a senior in high school, mm-hmm. and them being really into Metallica. I think one came out that year or something. 88. So it was already out. This is like 1989.
Yeah, they were still touring big time. And 89, I think one still may have been being played on MTV at that point. It was one of the best damn videos ever made, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was a really good video. I remember that, mm-hmm. for sure. So anyway, I have respect for Metallica.
That's right. And the last thing I will say too is that these guys are students of music. I think back to their Garage Inc. album that they did back in the 2000s. It was a double disc of covers, and a lot of the covers were from some really obscure bands that ended up making some decent money from the royalties because Metallica covered their songs.
Yeah.
So all respect to Metallica. Number 4 on my list.
Number 4, Lars.
Yes.
Yes, Lars.
I've always wanted to slap him.
Yeah.
It's only been recently that I could see myself tolerating a conversation with him, but every other, like growing up, I just wanted to like slap him in the face. He just looks arrogant.
Slap him in the face.
Just like, I'll slap you.
slap, I slap you. I'm slapping.
I'm here, Lars. Good slap.
Anyway, So my number 4,
How many minutes have you listened to them?
I have listened to my number 4 504 minutes.
Mm.
And it is LCD Sound System. What? What are you talking about?
Mhm.
No, it's true. I listen to the LCD Sound System a lot. And guess what kind of music it is?
Let me guess. It is electro funk polka.
If you leave out the polka, you're pretty much right. It is really good. Not, it's dance music. It's DJing dance music.
What is that group that did music for the second Tron movie?
Oh,
Keep talking, I'll find it.
yeah, second drum maybe, I don't know. But so LCD Sound System, I really like a couple songs of theirs, and I listen to them a lot.
Daft Punk.
Oh, Daft Punk, yeah. What about Daft Punk?
Are they similar?
Daft Punk, I would say they're very similar. Yes, very
Okay.
similar, very similar. Only the LCD Sound System is never played at the trash fence, but
Well, how dare they?
I know,
They call
right?
themselves a band.
Never played the trash fence.
Fuckers.
Anyway, check them out. Probably not a lot of our listeners have ever listened to them. They're not mainstream. None of mine are mainstream,
Except for one, but
except for the second. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
except
yeah.
for one, but that's like a really artistic one.
It didn't start that way, but we'll get there.
Okay, let's get there.
We'll get there. All right. Shall I go on to my number 3?
Yes, let's hear it.
All right. Coming in at number 3 for a total of 1,180 minutes this year, it's Black Sabbath.
Iron Man.
Yeah, this is another band I've seen live. Saw them live in '99 at the Palace of Auburn Hills in Detroit, Michigan.
Nice.
And Pantera opened for them.
Oh, wow.
Which was
I would
cool.
have liked to have seen Pantera.
Yeah, the lead singer is a douche in a lot of ways, but the music, different story altogether. The music doesn't touch upon this guy's stupidity in real life. But Black Sabbath, I mean, what more can be said? I mean, if ever, I mean, there were plenty of bands before them that were hard, that were forebearers to what metal became. But the first time you heard the sound of thunder on the first Black Sabbath album, this band defined it. They created heavy metal. And it all happened because of an industrial incident on Tony Iommi's last day of work at the factory before he was going off to be the guitarist for Jethro Tull.
Really?
Yep. Ended up, it was like a sheet press or something like that, and it took, he's a left-handed player, so it was on his right hand, ended up cutting the tips off of a couple of his fingers off, so he ended up making these custom little finger thimble things, and he had to detune his guitar. But to do this, to be able to use them initially, but the detuning of the guitar, along with the chords he had to use to adjust with his playing, one of his influences was Django Reinhardt, who had similar things. But, like the down tuning, the way he did was the key for metal's ultimate sound.
The key for metal's ultimate sound. Like, it's the key that is written.
It kicked it into it took what the other bands in the past, like the MC5 or Iggy and the Stooges, did and just made it more sonic, made it more dark, made it more just scary, I guess. Like the first song off the Black Sabbath album, called Black Sabbath, is ultimately about a guy who's being chased by Satan. And there were bands at the time that were kind of going dark like that, but just like the imagery, the music, and the fact that they got it inspired by a classical music piece. I think it's called Vulcan or something like that, but I mean, these guys are legends, and I am glad to say that I saw them, all the reunited original group playing, maybe not in their prime, but they weren't like 80 years old and hobbling around. They were still able to jump around on stage and, do everything they did. So Black Sabbath, number 3.
I love some Black Sabbath.
They have surprised me, even with stuff like the Ronnie James Dio. Now, as a kid, I was more of an Ozzy person, and Sharon, his manager,
And
um,
wife.
and wife, had a marketing thing because she didn't want the new version of Black Sabbath to be as successful, and it worked on me. And so I didn't listen to Dio's version of Black Sabbath until he passed away. And then once I heard Neon Nights, I felt like a dumbass,
Mm-hmm.
because it was a lot more faster and intense. And Dio's a different type of singer than Ozzy. I'm not going to say better, but just much different,
Yeah, very different.
and but just overall, you can't go wrong. And yeah, just seeing Tony Iommi play, man.
Yeah, super. I'm glad you got to see them.
Yep.
That's wonderful.
All right, who is your number 3?
Number 3 is a great band I'm so excited to introduce all of you to.
The Archies.
I've listened to them for 672 minutes, and it is a little band called Easy Star All Stars.
Mm.
Easy Star All Stars. And they are a reggae band that reggae-fies classic albums. So I was first exposed to them by listening to their album, Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, only reggae. And then I learned that they've done all kinds of different styles of music as reggae. And so I just have been fascinated with them. And, it's not even that I like reggae, I'm just fascinated. I love it when people take existing songs and do them in unique and interesting ways.
It reminds me of the bluegrass band Hayseed Dixie,
Uh-huh.
and they do bluegrass covers of AC/DC songs.
Right. And there's a bluegrass band that does covers of hip hop songs.
Yep. And then Hell Songs out of Sweden, and I tried to show you in a song of theirs, and you were like, "Oh no, please stop!" I guess you'd heard them before, and you were not a fan. But they do acoustic covers of metal songs.
Oh, yeah. I hate that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really like metal songs, so it's hard. Acoustically, they just are, their weirdness is just laid bare musically. Anyhow,
Disagree, but in some ways. In some ways, you are right, but
we can agree to disagree, right?
yeah.
Anyway, check out the Easy Star All Stars. They are worth it.
Nice. Any favorite songs in particular or album?
The whole Dark Side of the Moon album is as amazing as you will think.
Gotcha.
Mm.
Cool.
Mm.
How about we both go on to our number 2, because we both tied with our number 2 this year.
We had the same number 2.
Number 2. Number 2.
Number 2. What was your number 2?
Well, I listened to it for a total of 1,436 minutes. How long did you listen to them?
Oh, 1,094 minutes, Tim. You were obviously a bigger fan. And or just listen to more music than me.
Or maybe this counted the times that you listened on my playlist on the TV, and it counts towards mine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what happened to you.
So
this is basically your work playlist.
Yeah.
The distribution of the numbers of songs.
But to be clear, though, I mean, I think, these are probably the 5 core bands that spawned off the rest of my musical interest.
Well, that's awesome then.
Yeah, so we never announced the number 2.
Oh, right. No,
Hermits. No.
You can guess what it is. It is our friends,
the Beatles.
The Beatles.
Yeah, as we've
the lads from Liverpool.
Yeah, as we've talked about on the show before, this year they released their last ever song, Now and Then. Now and Then, a song that was originally supposed to debut with the 3rd anthology album in the 90s. In a lot of ways, I'm glad we had to wait for that, because it hits a lot different now than it would have hit at that particular time. I think this was, as I mentioned when we first talked about Now and Then, this was the perfect way to kind of wrap things up. And more than anything, what I really, really like about what that song did for me is all the good memories it brought back. Because I first, became a fan of the Beatles I was aware of them, but the first album I bought was when I was skipping to school one day and went to a pawn shop and saw they had a cassette for $1. I had $1 in my pocket, bought it, went home, popped it into the tape player, and heard Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band for the first time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and just, it
How
was
old were you again?
probably like 15 or 16.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I was listening to it. I liked it until A Day in the Life, the last song. And then that's when I absolutely fell in love with that band. That
Oh,
was the first time hearing a song to where my reaction was like, they can do this in music? Just with the whole orchestra, going up and then down, real simplistic way to put how complicated that song was. But also, too, my mom helped fuel my Beatles habit.
yeah.
Because I wasn't living with her at the time. I had ran away from home to live with my dad. Yeah, but, I would visit on the weekend and, told her I was buying cassettes and stuff, and she would give me $20. And, there was a place called Dodd's Record Shop I would go into, and for $20, I can walk out with 2 or 3 cassettes. So Beatles albums, even today, they're still going to be priced the same as a new album
Yeah.
from a new band. So I was able to walk out with 2. But it was real quickly, I was able to listen to the whole Beatles, and again, ultimately, I'm thankful for that song Now and Then coming out this year because it was able to kind of rehash those memories.
Yeah, and it is the last new thing we'll have from the Beatles. And it would have been sad if that was true in the 90s and not in 30 years later,
Yeah,
after we've also lost George, so that is even more poignant, and the lyrics clearly about Yoko and clearly gonna be on that album that they did together,
Double Fantasy.
Double Fantasy, was not meant to be about a group of friends or
But that's the beauty of the Beatles' music overall. The fact that they did write songs that you could easily put in a different meaning. Take, for example, the fact that the last time John Lennon saw Paul McCartney in person, John Lennon apparently said something along the lines of, "Remember me now and then."
oh
Those words. And I told you, like, if you buy the single of Now and Then in the record shop, on the back, they have an art piece on there. And that was an art piece that George Harrison bought in the 90s. And it sat like on a mantle somewhere, and then they packed it. But then a few years ago, his wife Olivia took it back out and hung it back up. And then one day she got a call from Paul McCartney, and Paul McCartney said, "Hey, we want your permission to be able to use George's part on us so we can finish the song Now and Then." And then she looked at that art piece, and you saw the picture of it, and anybody who saw the picture of or who has the single knows that that art piece had the words "Now and Then" on it, and a picture of the Beatles as young men, basically in their suits when they first made it big.
yep.
She felt it was like one of those ways that the spirit form of George was giving her permission to say yes to allowing his part to be included on that song.
That's so sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice clothes for the band, but just listen to their music. Like, again, even though they're the biggest popular band in music history of the 20th century, like, they were students of music as well. They didn't try to proclaim that they were creating something new. They just loved the music that they loved in terms of covering songs from different artists, and then they were able to create their own unique creations. I mean, they're one of the best for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And my appreciation of them has just grown and grown over the years.
Exactly, same here. So, any more thoughts on the Beatles?
No, that's enough to say about the Beatles.
Yeah, how about I wrap it up with my number 1?
Okay.
All right, coming in at number 1 for a total of 1,725 minutes, I listened to the Rolling Stones.
Wow. How
Yeah.
much of that was the new album, do you think?
A decent amount. When that new song came, when the song "Angry" came out, there was a time to where I would listen to it a lot, on repeat. Like if I, walk down to the store, it's one of those songs that there's a number of songs like "Angry" that sound great when you're outside listening to music with like either headphones or earpods in. Because it feels like life is giving you a soundtrack, and then you feel like, strutting some, maybe. I don't know. But some music can do that. And then, I mean, that's why I love listening to music outside.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Very interesting.
Yeah, and I've said it before about the band, and I'll say it again, but this was the start of my musical journey, the Rolling Stones. And if you look back year upon year, I mean, their songs are littered throughout my, top 100 list, because whether it's Spotify or Apple, they will have a top 100 playlist that they'll create for you, based on your music listening. But Apple goes one better. They do that throughout the year and update it every week.
Nice.
So Rolling Stones, number one for me.
Nice.
And I know with their new album, you're like, no, not my number one, maybe a number two.
Maybe number two.
Yeah.
I don't know. I love the Rolling Stones. I don't know what you're talking about. I love them. My number one was Girl Talk, a DJ
Mm,
similar to LCD Sound System. Girl Talk is a DJ, and I've seen them at the Crystal Ballroom here in Portland, Oregon,
mm,
which was super fun. It was one of the first things I went to after the pandemic sort of went away and things were more relaxed. It hadn't gone away, but things were more relaxed. And it was such a fun show. They had bubble cannons. They had like, I don't like 40 dancers on this relatively small stage. And they were all different body types and all different, colors. And it was just really a great show. And they have an album that I particularly like that I listen to a lot that I probably won't be able to remember the name of. That's how it starts.
oh,
That's the one.
oh,
That's how it starts.
that one?
Yeah,
I don't know. I've never heard that one.
I know. I'll play it for you sometime if I can find it.
Okay.
But I've listened to it over 1,000 times.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
That is the beauty of music, folks. That's why I love at the end of the year talking about this,
Hmm.
because music tastes are, there may be some similarities. There are always going to be similarities along the way, but even with similarities, there may be enjoyment for very different reasons.
Absolutely.
And being able to enjoy what other people listen to, even if you only listen to it once, it allows you to get in another person's head, for a small amount of time. And that, in my opinion, is not a bad thing.
Absolutely.
Yep. Any more thoughts on your music this year?
I'll just say that I had a really good time listening to music. Music helped me through difficult times. It was my companion during fun times and adventures. And
Sometimes lover. Thank you, Prince.
thank you, Prince. Yeah, that's all. Music is wonderful.
Exactly, folks. And Christmas is wonderful as well. The promise of a short episode didn't come true, as I suspected, but that is not, I mean, if you listen to this whenever, we appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep,
And we wish you a happy Christmas and a Merry New Year.
exactly. Another year in the books that we're doing this. This is amazing.
Yeah.
Yep. Next week, when you talk to us, folks, it will be the first episode of Friends Talking Nerdy in 2024.
Big 2-4.
Yeah, we don't know what we're going to talk about yet, but hopefully we do by the time we record.
I'm sure we will by the time we record.
Yeah. At least we're not going to do what we did with the first anniversary episode that we did. We all got drunk and then recorded.
Yeah, that's really bad.
Yeah, it was bad. A lot of in audio quality wise, a lot of the early episodes are bad.
Oh, they're so bad you can barely hear them.
It was a learning.
You could barely force yourself to listen to them.
It's been a learning experience the whole way. I've been very open about that. I mean, I will advance or decline at this art form at my own speed.
Yeah. And that's absolutely fine.
Yep. Exactly. Any other words for our lovely listeners at home?
Nope.
All right. Thank you all for listening on Christmas Day. If you were listening on the day this episode drops, if not, happy Thursday. I don't know, whenever the fuck you're listening to this. Each Monday, we'll have something in this podcast space to entertain your ear holes. Until we meet again, we bid you adieu.
Night, folks.
Now I have a machine gun. Ho, ho, ho.
Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy on iTunes, the Google Play Music Store, as well as Spotify. Remember to support Friends Talking Nerdy on Patreon. Goodbye, darling.